The waiting room at the Harwell County Veterans Affairs Benefit Coordination Office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet, and on the morning Petra Voss took a number and sat down, every plastic chair along the wall was filled. Petra Voss arrived at 8:10. She had been here before, twice, in fact, and both times she had left with a form to fill out, not a resolution. This time she had brought the folder. It sat in her lap now, a cream-colored accordion folder held shut with an elastic band, soft at the corners from years of being moved from one drawer to another, from one house to another, from one life to another. She held it the way a person holds something they have carried a long time and are no longer surprised by the weight. Marisol Reyes was 22 years old and 7 days into her AmeriCorps placement, and her job that morning was the sign-in table. She handed out numbered tickets and pointed people toward the correct window and tried to look as though she understood the system better than she did. She noticed the old woman immediately, not because there was anything loud about her, but because of the opposite. Everyone else in the room was restless in the way of people who expected to wait. The old woman was still. She wore a gray wool blazer over a white blouse, her silver hair pinned back, and she held the folder in her lap with both hands, unhurried, as though she had arranged herself for something that mattered and intended to remain arranged. At 8:37, the coordinator called her name. The coordinator's name was Dana Pelham. She had been in the role for 6 weeks, transferred from a different county office, and she wore her lanyard with the practiced air of someone who had decided that authority was a thing you displayed. She called the name without looking up from her screen, and when Petra Voss reached the window, Dana Pelham typed for another moment before acknowledging her. "What's the claim for?" she said. "Service-connected disability," Petra Voss said. Her voice was level. "I've submitted twice. Both times I was told the record was incomplete." Dana Pelham clicked through something on her screen. "I'm showing a prior filing. Says here the service documentation was flagged. Discharge papers, service record, they're showing as insufficient." She said it the way people say things they've said 100 times, which she had not. She'd been in the role 6 weeks, but the manner was practiced nonetheless. "I brought the documents," Petra Voss said, and she set the folder on the counter. Dana Pelham did not reach for it. "The issue is in the system," she said. "What I'm looking at is what the system has on file, and what the system has on file doesn't meet threshold. You'd need to come back with a full service record, an official DD-214 from the National Record Center, not a copy." Petra Voss said, "The DD-214 is in that folder." "Then it should have been submitted with the original filing." Dana Pelham's eyes were still on her screen. Marisol, at the sign-in table, had stopped handing out tickets. She was watching the window without meaning to. She had processed 40-something veterans in 7 days. She knew enough by now to know what it looked like when someone was being moved along. "I can leave it with you today," Petra Voss said. "Along with the rest of the documentation. The process requires it to be submitted through the portal," Dana Pelham said. "I can't accept paper submissions at the window. That's policy. I was told at my last appointment to bring originals. That may have been a miscommunication." Dana Pelham finally looked up, and what was in her face was not unkindness exactly, but the particular blankness of someone who has decided the person in front of them is a problem to be managed rather than a matter to be resolved. "I'd suggest going home, logging into the portal, and uploading your documents there. If you don't have portal access, the library on Clement Street has computers." She paused, and then she said it, the thing that made Marisol go still at the table, the thing that hung in the air of the waiting room where every plastic chair was full: "Come back when you have a real record." There was a beat. 2 beats. No one in the waiting room said anything. Petra Voss did not move. She did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She looked at Dana Pelham with the level, unhurried attention of someone who had learned a long time ago that composure was not the absence of feeling, it was the decision to be larger than the moment in front of you. She put her hand on the folder. "Would you like to see what's inside?" she said. "I've explained the process," Dana Pelham said, and began typing again. "I'd like you to see what's inside," Petra Voss said. "Not louder. Just more deliberate. The way you speak when you have decided that the truth has earned the right to be heard." Marisol was looking at the doorway at the end of the hall because that was where the sound had come from, the soft weight of footsteps stopping. A man stood there. He was somewhere in his mid-50s, a gray suit, a lanyard with a regional seal on it that Marisol had not seen before, and he was holding a clipboard he had forgotten to look at. He was looking at the window instead. He did not say anything yet. Dana Pelham said, "Ma'am, I need you to step aside so I can assist the next." "Mr. Alderman," a voice said from behind Petra Voss. Everyone turned. An alderman 2 seats down, a veteran by the look of him, a cane leaned against his knee, head straightened in his chair. He was looking at the man in the doorway. "Is that you?" The man in the doorway said, "Good morning, Gerald." He said it quietly, and he was already walking toward the window. His name was Walter Alderman. He was the Regional Director of Veterans Affairs for the Tri-County District, and he had come to the Harwell office that morning for an unannounced compliance review, a procedural spot check, the kind his office ran twice a year. He had arrived 7 minutes ago. He had been standing in the hallway when Dana Pelham told a veteran she needed to come back with a real record. He reached the window. He looked at Dana Pelham, and then he looked at Petra Voss, and he said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt. My name is Walter Alderman. I'm the Regional Director." He looked at the folder on the counter. "May I?" Petra Voss said, "Please." He removed the elastic band. He opened the folder. Inside, in the order they had been placed there years ago and never rearranged, were the following: a DD 214, the official certificate of release or discharge from active duty, issued by the Department of Defense, showing 3 separate tours of duty, the last of which was a combat deployment, and an honorable discharge after 22 years of service. Behind it, 3 service medals in a plastic sleeve, a combat medical badge, an Army Commendation Medal with a Valor device, and a Meritorious Service Medal. Behind those, a letter on official Army letterhead, signed by a Brigadier General, commending then-Major Petra Voss for her actions during a mass casualty event in which she had organized field triage for 31 wounded personnel under fire and not lost a single one. Walter Alderman read it. He read all of it. He did not rush. He turned each page the way you turn a page when you understand that what you are holding is not paperwork but a person's life rendered into the only language the institution accepts, dates, citations, seals, and he gave it the time it deserved. The waiting room was very quiet. The man with the cane 2 seats down had closed his eyes. A younger veteran near the door had taken off his cap and was holding it in his hands. People who had been looking at their phones were not looking at their phones anymore. He set the folder down on the counter, and he looked at Dana Pelham, and what was in his face was not anger exactly, it was something quieter and more permanent than anger. It was the expression of a person who has seen something clearly and intends to be precise about what he does next. "Step away from the window, please," he said to Dana Pelham. It was not a question. Dana Pelham opened her mouth. "Step away from the window," he said again. The same tone. The same volume. He did not need to say it a third time. She stepped away. He turned back to Petra Voss, and he said, "Major Voss, I apologize on behalf of this office. I am going to process your claim personally this morning, and I am going to ensure it is resolved before you leave this building." He paused. "Would you be willing to wait a few minutes while I get set up at another station?" "I've been waiting a long time," Petra Voss said. It was not a complaint. It was just the truth, stated without bitterness, the way she stated everything. "I know," Walter Alderman said. "I'm sorry." He picked up the folder himself and carried it. Marisol watched Dana Pelham walk away from the window and disappear through the door at the back of the office. She watched the waiting room settle and then unsettle in that particular way of a room full of people who have witnessed something they weren't expecting. She watched the men in the gray suit sit down across from Petra Voss at a side desk with the folder open between them and begin going through each page with the attention of someone to whom these papers were not documentation but a life. At 9:23, 14 minutes after Walter Alderman had taken the folder, a county supervisor arrived at the front desk and spoke quietly to the office manager. Marisol did not hear the words, but she saw the office manager nod, and she saw the office manager pick up a phone, and she knew from the way it happened that it was not a routine call. She learned later that afternoon, from the office manager's assistant, that Dana Pelham had been removed from client-facing duties pending a formal conduct review, that a referral had been filed with the State Veterans Affairs Board's Office of Professional Standards, and that the conduct referral cited, among other findings, The failure to review submitted documentation before rendering a determination and the use of dismissive language toward a benefits claimant in a public setting. Language that the referral described, in the careful formal phrasing of official documents, as inconsistent with the dignity owed to those who have served. Petra Voss left the Hartwell office at 10:41 that morning with a processed claim, a case number, and a direct phone line for the regional director's office. She shook Walter Alderman's hand. She thanked him in the same level voice she had used all morning, the voice of someone who had never expected anything other than what was right and had simply been patient about waiting for it to arrive. She tucked the folder under her arm and walked out through the waiting room. She passed Marisol's table and she did not stop, but she nodded, the slight, contained nod of someone who has been seen and knows it. Marisol watched her go. She thought about the combat medical badge in the plastic sleeve. She thought about 31 people under fire, and the word none, not one of them lost. She thought about the way Petra Voss had held the folder in her lap for 2 hours in a plastic chair, knowing what was inside it, never once opening it to wave it in anyone's face, just waiting for someone to have the decency to ask. She thought about the coordinator's voice, "Come back when you have a real record." She thought about what a real record looked like. How much room it took up. How quietly it could be carried. That afternoon, on her break, Marisol sat in the stairwell and wrote down everything she remembered about the morning in the small notebook she kept in her jacket pocket. She had started the notebook on day one because her supervisor had told her that this work would teach her things she couldn't learn in a classroom, and she had believed it in an abstract way, the way you believe things before they happen. She believed it differently now. She wrote, she never raised her voice. She just held the folder and waited for someone to be decent enough to open it. She always knew what was inside. She just needed one person who was willing to look. She closed the notebook. She went back to the sign-in table and handed out the next ticket, and the one after that, and she paid attention in a new way, to who was holding something, and whether anyone had thought to ask. She thought she understood now what her supervisor had meant. Not about the forms or the portals or the correct window for the correct claim. About the folder. About patience as a form of dignity, the kind that doesn't announce itself, doesn't argue, doesn't perform. The kind that simply holds what it carries and waits for one decent person to look.